passion for unfairness led our guest for this episode, Andrea Manzini, to campaign against an unfairness in the tax system affecting parents. This is the high income child benefit charge. His campaign has led to some change. But this episode isn't about the high income child benefit charge, but rather it's about how a passion, not directly tax related, can ignite another passion that can benefit your tax career. We also provide some advice for how you can identify and ignite that passion that would do the same for you. You're listening to episode 102 of the Tax Professionals podcast, the podcast that helps tax professionals to progress, develop, and improve their careers.
Welcome to the Tax Professionals podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you improve your tax career. Here's your host, Jack Bonehill.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode. Andrea Manzini, this episode's guest, is an indirect tax specialist who currently works in-house. I came to know about Andrea from his campaigning about the unfairness with the high income child benefit charge. He started a petition to make the situation fairer, and since he started, this has happened, although it's not quite where Andrea believes it should be at. In doing his campaign, he's had to put in a lot of work, which he wouldn't have been able to do on top of his day job and being a parent without his passion for it. And as a consequence of the campaign, he's had to do a lot of things, including doing research, and also including communicating with those who have disagreed with him. And he has gotten better at these skills as a result. These alone have benefited him in his tax career, but it doesn't stop there, as you will hear from the episode. Hearing Andrea's story has made me reflect on my own, and it made me realise that a passion that gets connected to your work as a tax professional somehow can hugely benefit your tax career. For me, my passion, if you want to call it that, is wanting to be good at things that are difficult or that not many people are good at. And for me, that passion has led to me having a passion for tax research and also providing excellent tax advice. My passion has meant I've spent a lot of time practicing these skills and trying to get better, which I don't think I'd have had as much motivation to do if I didn't have my underlying passion. And that to me is where you can benefit your career from a passion that you have, as when you have a passion, you want to do it more and you end up doing it more as a consequence. So that's what we talk about in this episode. We get to hear Andrea's story for how his passion started, how it evolved, how his career has benefited, and his advice for you and others wanting to find your passion that will benefit your tax career. I also added my own perspective and comments quite a lot on this one too, to drive home the point and give you a bit of a different perspective. Rough timings for each area of the episode can be seen in the show notes at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP102 or by going to the details section of the episode within your podcast player of choice.
Hi, I'm Maisie from Pro Tax Recruitment, and we are proud to sponsor the Tax Professionals podcast. At Pro Tax, we help tax professionals like you to find new roles that are a great fit to you, to find that perfect candidate to add to your team, and everything else in between. We focus solely on tax recruitment, and this allows us to give you current, informative insights into the tax market, helping you to make well-informed decisions. Head on over to the taxprofessionalspodcast.com/pro-tax to see our latest tax roles and our team, all of whom would be happy to speak to you.
A few weeks ago, I finished delivering the latest tax research masterclass. One of the attendees was clearly already good at research. They did a PhD in a branch of biology, I believe, and they worked as a researcher for some time. But they still benefited a lot from the masterclass. In particular, it's helped improve their confidence, efficiency, note-taking, and being able to clearly document how they've got to their answer. When I created the masterclass, I created it most for people in their first few years of their career who wanted or needed to get better at tax research, but the more I run it, the more I see how it benefits a wider range of people than that. Regardless of how good you currently are at tax research, there's a good chance you can become even better, and there should be at least one tip in the masterclass that makes your life easier going forward and that makes you a better researcher. If you've got any interest at all, I can suggest you take a look at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/masterclasses, which contains full details of the masterclass. The link for this is in the show notes. My main aim for the podcast this year is to increase listenership, and you can help with that by being connected to me on LinkedIn and liking, commenting on, or sharing my posts, as that increases the reach of them and gets the podcast in front of more people. So, if you can do one thing for me from this episode, please head on over to my LinkedIn page, a link to which is in the show notes, go to the activity section of that page and hit like, leave a comment, or share. Maybe you can leave a comment on what you liked about this episode. Without further ado, let's get to the episode. If you don't mind then, Andrea, can you just start off by telling us a little bit about you and your tax career to date?
My name's Andrea Manzini. I'm a tax advisor, and at present I work in-house as an indirect tax specialist for the biggest UK forecourt operator and retailer called Motor Fuel Group, or MFG. I worked in tax in different roles for about 12, 13 years, I think now, in both compliance and advisory capacities, covering direct and indirect taxes, especially indirect taxes. My main area of specialism is VAT. I briefly worked in practice and then moved on to industry. And I'm a qualified accountant, a fellow ACCA member. On a personal level, I have 2 young kids and I'm married. Should be married for around 7 years now. So I guess I'm also a fellow member of the Association of Charter Certified Husbands. I have several hobbies and passions. Love practicing many sports, tennis to running and skiing. But my favorite by far is football. I play regularly. I also love watching football. And I used to be also an FA referee. I've been for around 5 years. And more recently, I've developed a passion for politics, actually, UK politics in particular, and policies more specifically, of course. And there's one, actually, that, in my view, did have, and to some extent, to a great extent, in fact, still has lots of shortcomings and a great degree of unfairness. I'm referring to the rules governing child benefit payments, which are very much tax related.
Yeah. So do you think your interest then is more wide than the high income child benefit charge? And does it just relate to the, I suppose, general government policies around childcare and benefits?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a father of 2, as I mentioned, so I'm probably a bit biased and very much an interested party in this topic. But when I started looking into whether myself, my household qualified for child benefit payments, the more, and of course I don't, the more I dug into these rules and the benefit charge, the less really they made sense to me. And just briefly, I can give you just very briefly a couple of examples. So let's say we got family A, where one of the 2 parents of, let's say, 2 young kids is unemployed, and the second one earns £80,000 in employment income. We got family B, let's call it, where we got 2 parents, both earning 60 grand each. We got household A on a total gross income of 8,000 with 2 kids, and household B on a gross total household income of 120,000. So obviously, household A is £40,000 worse off. But under the current child benefits rules, household A is not entitled to any child benefits, while household B is entitled to full child benefits for both kids. I don't think these rules make sense at all. And that's how I became interested into the subject. And very much due to my tax background, I thought to start raising awareness around this issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. I obviously haven't faced it from the same angle as you because I haven't got children, but I remember when I went to university, the amount of loan that you got that wasn't really a loan, so you didn't have to pay it back, depended on again, household income, or well, not household income. I think it depended on one parent again, just like it does with the child benefit charge currently. So I got 0 free loan, basically. I got none of it. Whereas I had a friend, exactly that family B scenario where there was 2 parents earning, combined earned more than my dad, who was the only one earning at the time. They got the full free loan, and that always peeved me off a lot because that person as well, the friend I'm thinking about there, they were an only child. I was one of 3, so they were already spoilt to death as well, and then getting free government money on top of it.
Yeah, that's substantially the same situation, and I think it because sometimes the rules quite complex, and whenever there's a tax angle to that, people sometimes who are not tax professionals, they get a bit reluctant in a way to try to understand essentially the rules in details. But I think they simply don't make sense. They're simply unfair and should be changed.
Yeah, completely agree. So just going backwards one step then. So it sounds
Yes.
like you had your first child, you looked into the position, realised
Yep.
you didn't qualify, started
Yep.
digging a bit further, realised it was entirely unfair, and that kind of sparked your passion for this topic, did it?
Yeah, correct. It was actually after my second was born, and then mindful of obviously the extortionate childcare cost that you need to face in the United Kingdom when you become a parent. And I thought that can't be possible. It's absolutely unfair that actually there are people treated as a high earner, effectively as rich people, when they just earn, well, before the last budget, when they earn £50,000, when actually nurseries these days could easily cost for under £2,000 a month per child. So I think at that point, and particularly because the rules don't look at this sort of household situation, or they do, but it's enough that one of the parents exceeds the thresholds for you to get essentially a high income child benefit charge. That's when I thought something needs to be done, and these things needs to be changed and reformed as soon as possible. And that's as you said, that's how I started campaigning to get these rules reformed.
Yeah. It's almost as if actually it's more better suited to someone that's got a personal tax specialism, because you're obviously, well, indirect
Yes.
tax, which I'm guessing primarily VAT though, right?
Yes,
Like,
correct.
like obviously you started there, and that's when it ignited your passion. How did it kind of like evolve then and progress? Because I reckon obviously first off, when you first found out about it, you're probably more annoyed than passionate about it. And then it turned into a passion over time.
Yeah, that's, I think it's fair to say so. And yeah, so my sort of anger then translated into deciding effectively to start raising awareness of the issue. And that's when I started campaigning mainly on LinkedIn and subsequently on X, formerly known as Twitter, on the issue about mid last year, second part of the year, start sort of posting about the unfairness of this rule. And my post started to get quite a bit of attentions and comments, and people started to reach out to me privately as well, quite a bit. Sometimes to disagree with what I had to say, but more often to voice their support and shock effectively about this rule. And some at some point suggested I should start a petition to get things changed. So I did just that, basically. And yeah, fast forward a few months, and the challenge and the chancellor actually changed the child benefits rules precisely in the direction that I've indicated. No doubt there's been reading my posts. And I know someone may say that it was actually Martin Lewis' campaign on the subject that convinced the Treasury to act, in which case I think I've inspired Martin Lewis, who's in turn inspired the Chancellor.
Yes. That's one way to look at it. Just out of curiosity then, when people were disagreeing with you, what were they saying?
Well, somebody were saying, well, some of those were quite direct and straightforward in saying, well, then if you can't afford to have children, you shouldn't have any children. So a few of those. Others were more concerned about the broader financial impact for the Treasury. Obviously, increasing payments means increasing essentially the amount of public spending, let's face it. Hence, in turn, means that you need to find alternative source of funding, either through borrowing or increasing or decreasing spending, or increase the tax take from other sources. And that's essentially the sort of criticisms that I got. Others were saying, well, actually, if you earn more than 50 grand, you are, I think it's fair to say that you are in the top, whatever, 10% earners in the country. So you can be classed as rich. There's nothing wrong with that. To which I normally reply, well, there's a huge regional difference, because of course, if you live in the southeast or in big cities like Birmingham, Manchester, Bristol, Edinburgh, etc., then obviously the cost of living is very much more felt there in other parts of the country. And then actually some of the policy makers helped me support my position, because recently we got the Chancellor of Germany saying that £100,000. Actually, it's not a great salary. I think he said it's not a huge salary, something like that. There was actually a minister, I forgot his name. This was this minister who decided to resign from his ministerial post. That's what he said publicly, because £120,000, well, were not enough to support the needs of his family, and he has 2 children. So I think that, and to some extent, actually, I agree that even if you earn, let's say, 70, 80,000 pounds, and you have 3 children, particularly if the kids are young or very young, well, you may struggle actually to make ends meet. So essentially, those were the sort of criticisms that I got for me campaigning to. And essentially, my campaign, by the way, was about increasing the single earner threshold to at least 70,000, and then moving to an household income threshold before getting charged the high income child benefit charge of at least £100,000.
Yeah. The first point you made actually about, so if you can't afford to have children, then don't have them. And to some extent, that is partly my view. But the thing is, if there's a policy out there to support, generally speaking, parents out there that aren't considered, say, rich, with whatever test is applied to determine whether they're rich, then, it's more the unfairness really of it than, whether they can afford it. And let's face it, most people who are earning that amount, if they were outside London, can probably afford it, but without any supplement from the government. But if other people are getting the supplement from the government, and they're probably in a better financial position because, combine the 2 parents earn more, which is the situation you highlighted right at the start, then it's only fair that other people get it too. I think that's probably the thing that annoys you the most, right? Or what fuels the passion for it more than anything is the unfairness that stems from it.
It's the unfairness. It's absolutely unfairness, because, as I said, back to the example of the 2 households with the first one being £40,000 worse off than other, and not getting any support, even if, for instance, the same household had, I don't know, 5 children, and while the other £40,000 better off and still getting the full child benefits. I think, as you said, is the unfairness point that still needs to be addressed. Although, of course, in the latest budget, the Chancellor acknowledged some of the coming, and the fact that, for instance, the £50,000 threshold has never been adjusted since it had been introduced by the first David Cameron government, by George Osborne, the Chancellor at the time, in 2013. And let's bear in mind that, for instance, other groups are protected against inflation and cost of living, thinking about, for example, the pensioners with the triple lock. So why working parents and families have no protection at all? So back to your point, I think is very much the unfairness that drove me initially to campaign and essentially fight this battle. And let's not forget that at the moment, particularly, we need more children. We need more kids, because at the moment, the birth rate in the UK is just 1.5. And to, as someone say, replace the population, you need at least a birth rate of 2 or 2.1. So I think any policy that goes in the direction of supporting working parents is for the good of the country.
Mm-hmm. So outside of actual knowledge for the high income child benefit charge, then what would you say that you've learned, maybe in terms of skills or experiences that are going to benefit you in some way? What would you say you've learned from having the passion, I suppose, and driving the petition forward?
Yeah. No, it's to be honest, I think I've achieved a lot, and I could see how also my career has benefit or will benefit. Let me give you some facts and example to support what I just said. So for instance, I've definitely improved, and these are all, by the way, byproducts effectively of me campaigning, but I've definitely improved my network on LinkedIn, for instance. The number of people looking at my profile at some point went well over 1,000 at some point. I've grown my network from 400 people, 400 followers, to about 1,500 followers now. So essentially, I've become known or more known. And let me tell you something else that is great. If you're looking particularly to move to a new role, because the amount of recruiters approaching me these days is almost overwhelming. And it was particularly around the turn of the year when I was campaigning really hard, effectively. I think I had a recruiter a day on average, at least, probably more, contacting me, and they were all unsolicited approaches, by the way. On top of
Yeah.
that, I also learned a lot, for instance, about problem solving and how to interact with others, particularly those that may disagree with me. And above all, I also learned that all of us, really all of us, can play a pivotal role in the wider society in our own field of expertise. And in fact, I would encourage anyone to think about what they think is fundamentally wrong within their industry, again, area of expertise, and to raise awareness of this. And how can that be fixed? For instance, if you are, I don't know, a property solicitor dealing with conveyances and have gone through many conveyances and found that something in the property laws is seriously unfair, stupid, or broken, well, raise that issue publicly. You might be amazed how much support you can gather and how much you can learn by raising that issue. And back to the point of being actually known outside the probably small circle of colleagues, former colleagues, people that you met at the usual sort of gathering, industry gathering, etc. That I've recently attended an EY indirect tax conference in London, and obviously we were all wearing our tags with our name and name, surname, and company name, etc. And these guys, at some point, I spotted him like looking at me and looking at my name, and then he approached me and he was like, "Are you by any chance that child benefit campaigner?" I was like, "Wow, yes, that's me." All right, yeah, I'm a massive supporter of what you actually stand for, and congratulations, keep going, and all that. To which I replied, "Did you sign the petition?" He was like, "Oh, not yet." And then he signed the petition in front of me.
You mean you
I
forced him to sign the petition in front of you?
I don't think that's a fair description of what happened, but in a way, I sort of steered him in the right direction.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I think when you have like a passion for something, in this case, I know it's ended up manifesting as the high income child benefit charge, but really it's probably a
Yes,
passion for unfairness more than anything. But when you have a passion for something, I think you learn an awful lot from having
an
it,
awful lot.
because you have so much motivation to like sit there and, well, in this case, you would have sat there probably for hours researching stuff, maybe looking at tax legislation, looking at tax guidance, looking at
Yes,
the policy, thinking about changes. Like, you would have spent the reason you've been able to dedicate that time to it and remain focused, I suppose, outside of your busy job and outside of being a parent, is because you were genuinely interested by it. And so you would have learned all those skills much quicker than what you would have done if you hadn't had the passion for it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. You're spot on. And I'm glad that you actually also touched on one absolutely crucial point. Because first of all, you need, if you are planning to raise awareness about an issue, or you want to campaign for something and changing something, first of all, my advice is do your research and make sure you understand as much as possible the issues and the issue and the details of the issue that you want to tackle. And actually, I think that beyond like any campaign or any issue that you want to raise awareness of, that is something absolutely invaluable in many other circumstances. I think, for example, I think we have all gone through, you know, those, particularly if you work in industry, those meetings in a big organization with several attendees from different departments to decide who should be tasked with something new that actually could sit in several departments, tax or finance or legal, I don't know, compliance, or perhaps IT or HR. And usually, in my experience, the person of the team attending these meetings that knows
Yeah.
the least about the issue is the one that ends up doing the doing. That's because I think sometimes they did not know enough about the issue itself to argue why it shouldn't be them doing the doing. So I'm not discouraging anyone to do more work or to be proactive, etc. But sometimes knowing more and do proper research will usually help boosting your defense effectively too. And I think you, Jack, can teach us all a thing or two about how to conduct a proper research.
Yeah, well, that's my, I suppose, tax ward passion, isn't it? But it's not stems from having a
Yeah.
love for tax, I suppose, really. For me, it
No.
always stems from, so all the way through like uni, school, everything. Like I've always chosen to try and be good at things that other people find difficult. So at uni, I did a maths degree, but I chose all the modules that people generally found difficult. That might sound insane, but
Yeah.
I think when I look back and I look at how I've been in lots of different situations, I like doing things that are difficult that I know not many people are good at, because I don't know, it's almost like a challenge to do that and be good at something that people find difficult. So I think the exact same thing for me happened with tax research. I could
Yes.
see that people were
Yes.
advocating using it, but then most people weren't. And, I could ask people, how do you find this, or how do you use this legislation book? And, they had no idea. And so I think that for me made me think, right, this is difficult now for people. Clearly not many people are good at it. So I'm going to try and be good at it. And that's just evolved into me really liking tax research and putting a lot of time and effort into it. And I would say becoming pretty good at it, which is why I decided to do the masterclass. And again, it came from
Absolutely.
like a passion, I suppose, a passion for becoming good at things that other people find difficult. So again, mine manifested itself in tax research. I spent loads of time doing it. I wanted to get better, become, I suppose, good at it because I dedicated so much time to it. And if I didn't have that underlying passion, I would never have done that either. And I probably wouldn't be any better at using ledge than the average person.
Yeah. No, that makes a total sense. And I think being able actually to research and understand the issue, sometimes navigating, particularly these days, obviously, we're online, there's pretty much everything, but finding the right source of information, the right examples, the right explanation is a daunting experience sometimes. So having the ability to do that, particularly in a profession like tax, I agree, it's absolutely fundamental.
To see our latest tax rolls at ProTax, along with our friendly team who's more than happy to speak to you, head on over to the taxprofessionalspodcast.com/pro-tax.
Yeah. And I think, to be fair, I think the point probably that I want to make from, your example of having your passion and my example of having mine is
Yes.
that everyone is passionate. Well, I'd like to think everyone is passionate about at least one thing. And that one thing probably does overlap with something that relates to your career in some way. I don't know. You might have a passion for people. You might have a passion for
Yeah.
being nice, or whatever it is. You will be able to connect that to your work in some way. And I think if you can connect it to your work and then do more of that thing and become really good at it, even if it's not directly tax related, it could still help your career an awful lot. Because if you become an absolutely excellent people manager or an absolutely excellent leader, that will carry you, I think, quite far in your career. For me, being technically good has carried me quite far, but in other circumstances, people will be really good at something else. So it's almost like find that passion, become really good at something, and take advantage of it, and that's how you can get the benefit from it, from a career
Oh,
sense,
yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, and I think I do agree. And actually, I believe that that's in an ideal world, if all of us could actually work by cultivating our passions, I think it will be much happier as an individual, much happier as a society, more productive, and the world will be a better place.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think so. And the mistake I made actually towards the end of my last role was spending time doing things I thought was going to progress my career rather than things that I enjoyed,
Yeah.
thinking that that would get me to where I wanted to get in terms of like goals quicker. And it probably just did the opposite, in fact, because I just ended up not enjoying work as much and not wanting to put as much effort in as what I would have done, say, a few years prior.
No, that's interesting because this is something actually, Jack, that I heard a lot, particularly from other tax professionals, other colleagues or former colleagues, and sometimes I think in tax, we lose sight of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, the way I see it, is that in tax, we play an absolutely crucial, very important role for the wider society. Because let's go back to the definition of tax, what taxes are supposed to do. Taxes should be about redistribution of wealth, should be about encouraging or discouraging certain behaviors. and thinking about, taxes or duties on alcohol, tobacco, and also about raising money to finance public services and things that we all need and we all use. So we in tax have a huge role to play in the society, because sometimes people think about tax professionals, and tax professionals think about themselves in some circumstances as those that need to minimize the amount of tax that employers and clients pay. And that is definitely one of the objectives. Being tax efficient, absolutely, that is one, and I don't dispute that. And I work for my employer in industry, and being tax efficient is definitely, absolutely one of the objectives. But the other one is being tax compliant, because by being tax compliant, you pay your fair share of tax, and you make sure that the state functions. There you go, NHS and state school functioning and police and all that. And those are the two fundamental things, and I say compulsory thing for any tax professional, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. There's a further element. There's also, I think, a moral duty, which is to look at your area of expertise and try to see where things can be improved, because you have the knowledge, you have the skills to understand when things within tax and tax laws are unfair. And that's why we are, as I said, pivotal in the society, I think, any tax professional, but also privileged, because we got most of the time the skills and the mindset to raise awareness, to change things and to make things better for the greater good and for the society as a whole.
Yeah. I think the problem that a lot of tax professionals have, particularly ones who are younger, is they struggle to communicate things in a way that actually appeals to people who aren't tax professionals.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
you've done a good job
absolutely.
of that. And you've done a good job of that with your posts, obviously, because the people who are liking your posts are not just tax people, are they? They're much more wider than that.
100%. We need to be understood beyond the circle, the limited niche circle of tax professionals. We need to be understood by the wide population, I think, particularly if you want to change things. I agree. So communication is another key skills for tax professionals. The idea of a tax professional just with his or her calculator and making sure to fill and file the returns, I think it's a bit outdated, to be honest. I think we can play a much greater and important role in the society, particularly when we develop a passion for something. In fact, I'm already thinking about other couple of situations, unfair, let's say, tax rules that soon I might raise awareness of.
Yeah. Are they related to indirect taxes this time, or are they outside that again?
One is not. One is about, so spoiler alert, it's about capital gain tax. I think personally, the rates the applicable to capital gains tax are too low compared to the ones applicable to income tax. So the amount of taxes paid by working people are disproportionately and unfairly higher than the ones paid by people relying purely on gains on passive investments in commercial properties, shares, etc., etc. So you can end up in a situations where you, by earning just over 60 grand and having 2 kids and perhaps student loan, you may end up with a marginal tax rate of 70%, over 70%. While if you are a millionaire, actually making most of your money out of things like residential property, commercial properties, investment in shares, you just pay from 10 to 24% tax rate. Well, that's I think is grossly unfair. Plus, capital gain tax is usually tax paid mainly, not only, but mainly by millionaires and billionaires. And again, back to the what tax is all about, redistribution of wealth. But then I think in a fairer tax world, I think that the rates of tax charge on income should be lowered at the expense of those on capital gain tax. But I think that requires, again, explanation, awareness, communication. So, Jack, will you join me in this new battle?
We will have to see where I've got a similar one actually. It's almost very connected. National insurance, because national insurance for people who are employed, obviously there's employee national insurance, which is, as long as it hasn't changed anyway, is higher than the equivalent class 4 rate for the self-employed. And obviously employers pay the employer national insurance on top, and there's no equivalent for self-employed either. And, the reason things like the IR35 legislation on payroll working, why people try and use consultants they try and justify self-employed. The reason they do all those things is because of the disparity in national insurance. It's the same thing with what you're talking about. Like, there's an incentive for people to try and structure things so that it's capital and not income, so that it gets subject to capital gains tax. And it's the exact same thing with national insurance. And I think really, like with national insurance, it should just be, it should be made the same for self-employed and employed. I think that would just solve so many problems that government tries to just plug the problem for with creating rules like IR35 and off payroll working and all those similar things, because they wouldn't have to do it if the national insurance rates were aligned, because that's the only incentive it's the main incentive anyway, that, encourages employers to try and engage people as self-employed and not as employees.
No, I see how that could solve the problem. On the flip side, perhaps the counter argument might be, obviously, being a self-employed person is a riskier type of business, although you can get more flexibility and stuff, and hence the more advantageous tax treatment. But definitely, obviously, equalizing the two would remove any sort of trick or attempt to actually circumvent the laws. I agree with that.
Yeah, they should. Well, in that case, if you wanted to keep the class 4 and the class 1 rates slightly different, at least from what the individual pays, then just scrap the employer's national insurance, because that's really what drives it from an employer's perspective. It's a 13.8% charge, isn't it? So it's a big number when you start adding hundreds of thousands of pounds into the mix.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for people then who may not currently have any passions that are connected or relevant to them working in tax at all, do you have any advice for them at all? Maybe potentially in terms of how to find it, or, what you think they should do in their situation?
I think look at what you think is a problem. Look at an issue that you're passionate about. Research, look into that, speak to people, speak to experts in the field, and then raise an awareness and a campaign to change things. That's how I would approach it. And I think you will be, whether you be successful or not, I think it does not really matter, because the things that you will gain in terms of soft skills, communication skills, those will be invaluable for another battle, another challenge, another role, another things that you want to pursue later on in life. But if you don't try, you will never succeed. If you try, you may fail, but you may also succeed. So I think it's worth trying.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was thinking, from my perspective, my advice is probably a bit wider in that. Start with thinking about things that you're passionate about outside of work, and see if you can connect that some way to your work. So I know that's not for the greater good necessarily like yours is, Andrea, but at least it could make people enjoy their role more and maybe, learn things quicker as a result of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add at all for people who listen to this episode?
No, nothing else really, other than reinforcing the message. Get passionate about something, raise awareness, learn new skills. You'll be amazed how things can turn out.
Yeah, and I'm sure you want people to sign the petition as well, right?
Yes, please do sign the petition. You'll find me if you follow me on LinkedIn. Probably LinkedIn is the best. It's the best social media to use it's the where I've campaigned, and I'm still campaigning the most. You'll find the link for the petition to sign. by clicking on my profile. And please do follow me. I tend to speak about tax, sometimes about UK politics, and every now and then about other passions and other topics.
Yeah. And I will add a link to the petition to the show notes for this episode as well. Hopefully, you have an idea now of how finding a passion that you can connect to being a tax professional can benefit your tax career, improving your skills, personal branding, and also benefiting you in other ways potentially too. Just want to reiterate the advice that you will have a passion that you can take advantage of in tax and have that manifest itself in the form of another passion that directly benefits your career. In Andrea's case, that was the passion for unfairness, which created his passion for campaigning against the high income child benefit charge, and mine is a passion for being good at things that people find difficult, which has manifested itself as me having a passion for tax research and giving excellent tax advice. There's someone who I've interviewed on the podcast previously, Jenny Brown, and she had a passion for helping and supporting others, which she manifested as a passion for being really supportive to her staff and team at work. These are just some examples, but I can suggest you spend some time thinking about what yours is or could be so that you can take advantage of it at work. Show notes for this episode are at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP102, and within the show notes, you'll be able to find a link to Andrea's petition, my tax advice masterclass, and also my tax research masterclass. As you heard in this episode, my main goal for the podcast this year is to increase listenership by heading on over to my LinkedIn profile, connecting with me if you haven't already, and either liking, commenting on, or sharing my LinkedIn post. You will help with that. If I would ask you to do one thing after listening to this episode, it would be to like, comment on, or share the post announcing this episode, and that would be much appreciated. If you liked this episode, you can get notifications of all future episodes of the podcast by heading on over to thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/subscribe. Episodes are bi-weekly and released on Mondays. But that's it for this episode. Hope you have found the episode useful and have taken away some useful points to help you to progress, develop, and improve your tax career. Until next time.